It was a busy Saturday night at the Golden Fork, one of the most popular restaurants in downtown. The place was known for its amazing food and great service. People came from all parts of the city to eat there. Tonight was no different, with every table full and a line of people waiting outside. James Chen, the owner of the Golden Fork, loved to work alongside his staff. Even though he owned the restaurant, he didn't just sit in an office. He helped serve food, talked with customers, and sometimes even washed dishes. He was a humble man who started the restaurant 5 years ago with money he saved for many years. Tonight, James was helping Lisa at the front desk. Lisa usually handled the reservations and welcomed guests, but there were so many people that James decided to help. He wore simple clothes, black pants and a white shirt with the restaurant's logo. Nothing about him screamed, "I'm the owner." He liked it that way. At about 7:30 p.m., when the waiting line was longest, a woman with big sunglasses and a designer bag walked straight to the front, cutting in front of everyone. She had blonde hair styled in an expensive-looking cut, wore high heels that clicked loudly on the floor, and had a face that showed she was used to getting what she wanted. "Excuse me," Lisa said politely. "There's a line of people waiting. You'll need to." "I don't wait in lines," the woman interrupted, taking off her sunglasses dramatically. "My name is Patricia Wilson. I need a table for two right now." James watched quietly from beside Lisa. He knew all of their regular customers, and he had never seen this woman before. Lisa checked the reservation list on her computer. "I'm sorry, Ms. Wilson, but I don't see your name here. Without a reservation, the wait is about 90 minutes right now." Patricia's face turned slightly red. She leaned closer to the desk. "Listen to me carefully. I don't think you understand who I am. I am a very close friend of James Chen. We have dinner together all the time. He always makes sure I get the best table in the house." James raised his eyebrows but remained silent. He was curious to see where this was going. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Chen reserves our VIP table well in advance, even for his friends," Lisa explained, glancing quickly at James. "Well, call him right now," Patricia demanded, her voice getting louder. "I'm sure he's sitting in his big office upstairs, counting all his money. Tell him Patricia is here. They'll come running." A few people in line were starting to watch the scene. Some looked annoyed, others amused. "Actually," Lisa began, "Mr. Chen is." Patricia cut her off again. "You know what? Don't bother. I'll call them myself." She pulled out her phone and pretended to dial a number. "Hello, James? Yes, it's Patricia. I'm at your restaurant, and they're refusing to seat me. Can you believe it?" She paused as if listening to someone on the other end, though it was clear to everyone there was no call happening. "Yes, I told them we're friends." "No, they don't believe me. It's the young lady at the front with the black hair." James decided it was time to step in. He cleared his throat and said in a calm voice, "Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing. You're looking for James Chen." Patricia looked at him with annoyance. "Yes, he's my good friend and the owner of this place. Who are you supposed to be? The busboy?" Several people in line gasped. Lisa tried hard not to smile. "Actually," James said with a small smile, "I'm James Chen, the owner of the Golden Fork, and I don't believe we've ever met before." The color drained from Patricia's face. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The phone in her hand, still showing no active call, suddenly seemed very heavy. "There must be some mistake," she said, her voice much quieter now. "The James I know is older, much older, with gray hair." James, who was only 35 with jet black hair, smiled politely. "I'm the only James Chen who has ever owned this restaurant. Perhaps you're thinking of a different place." By now, everyone in the waiting area was watching. Some people had even taken out their phones, possibly recording the scene. A couple at the front of the line whispered to each other while pointing at Patricia. Patricia's embarrassment quickly turned to anger. She straightened her back and put her sunglasses back on, as if they might shield her from the situation. "Well, clearly there's been some confusion. My assistant must have given me the wrong information. I was invited here by someone important, very important." James nodded, still keeping his calm. "I understand. Mix-ups happen all the time. If you'd like to wait like our other guests, we'd be happy to serve you when a table becomes available." Patricia looked at the long line behind her. The thought of going to the back of the line seemed to pain her physically. She clutched her designer bag tighter. Perhaps you don't understand who I am. She tried again, but with less confidence. I'm Patricia Wilson. I work for Wilson Investments. My face was on the cover of Business Monthly last year. An older man standing in line spoke up. I read Business Monthly every month. Never seen you there. This caused a few people to laugh quietly. Patricia's face turned red again, but this time from embarrassment. Just then, a well-dressed couple who had been eating in the restaurant approached the front desk to pay their bill. The woman recognized James and smiled warmly. James, dinner was amazing as always. That new fish dish you created is perfect. James smiled back. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Mrs. Johnson noticed Patricia and the tense situation. Oh, is this a friend of yours? Before James could answer, Patricia jumped in. Yes, we're very close friends. Tell them, James. Every eye turned to James. He looked at Patricia and then at the waiting customers who had been patient all this time. No, we just met, he said simply. And Ms. Wilson was just about to decide if she wanted to wait for a table like everyone else. Patricia's fake smile disappeared completely. She looked around at all the faces watching her, some confused, some amused, some clearly judging her. This is ridiculous, she finally said. I'll take my business elsewhere, a place that knows how to treat VIPs properly. She turned to leave but bumped into a waiter carrying a tray of drinks. The waiter managed to steady the tray, but one glass of red wine tipped over, splashing down the front of Patricia's white designer dress. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Patricia froze, looking down at the growing red stain in horror. I'm so sorry, the young waiter said, looking terrified. James quickly grabbed some napkins and offered them to Patricia. Please, let us help. We'll pay for the cleaning. But Patricia was beyond reasoning. With a loud shriek, she pushed past everyone and stormed out of the restaurant, leaving behind only the lingering scent of expensive perfume and the sound of her heels clicking angrily on the floor. As the door slammed shut, James turned to the waiting customers with an apologetic smile. I'm very sorry for the disturbance. To thank you all for your patience, the first round of drinks will be on the house tonight. The announcement was met with applause, and just like that, the normal, pleasant atmosphere of the Golden Fork returned. James and Lisa exchanged a look. This would definitely be a story to remember. The next morning, James arrived at the Golden Fork earlier than usual. He liked to have quiet time before the restaurant opened for lunch. As he unlocked the front door, his mind was still on the strange woman from the night before. In his 5 years of running the restaurant, he had dealt with difficult customers, but Patricia Wilson was something special. Inside, James turned on the lights and checked that everything was in order. The cleaning crew had done a good job. The wooden floors shined, and all tables were perfectly set. He walked to his small office in the back to review the day's reservations and check food deliveries. At about 9:30 a.m., there was a knock on the restaurant's front door. James looked up, surprised. The restaurant didn't open until 11 a.m. Through the glass door, he could see a woman. It took him a moment to realize it was Patricia Wilson. James hesitated. Part of him wanted to pretend he wasn't there, but his better nature won out. He walked to the door and opened it slightly. We're closed until 11 a.m., he said politely. Patricia looked different today. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled, and she wore simple jeans and a blouse instead of designer clothes. Most noticeably, she wasn't wearing her large sunglasses, and her eyes showed she hadn't slept well. I know, she said quietly. I just wanted to talk to you, just for a few minutes. James thought about it, then opened the door wider. Come in. Patricia walked in slowly, looking around the empty restaurant. In the daylight, without the evening crowds, the Golden Fork looked peaceful and welcoming. Would you like some coffee? James offered, walking toward the coffee machine behind the bar. Yes, thank you, Patricia replied, her voice lacking the demanding tone from yesterday. James made 2 cups of coffee and brought them to a table near the window. Patricia sat down, her hands fidgeting nervously with her purse. I came to apologize, she finally said after taking a sip of coffee. My behavior yesterday was terrible. I was rude to you, your staff, and your customers. James nodded but remained silent, giving her space to continue. The truth is, Patricia continued, her voice shaking slightly, I was supposed to meet a date here. Someone I really wanted to impress. He suggested your restaurant, saying it was amazing but hard to get into. I wanted to seem important and well connected. She looked down at her coffee. It was stupid and childish. What happened with your date? James asked. Patricia laughed sadly. He texted an hour before to cancel, some emergency at work. But I had already spent 2 hours getting ready and was halfway here. I thought. She paused. I thought I could still have a nice dinner alone. Show myself I didn't need him. But when I saw how crowded it was, something just snapped in me. James could see she was being honest. Everyone had bad days. Everyone made mistakes. The wine stain came out of my dress, by the way, Patricia added with a small smile. So at least there's that. James smiled back. I'm glad. And thank you for coming to apologize. Not many people would do that. Patricia took a deep breath. There's one more thing. I looked up your restaurant properly after I got home. Read all the reviews, your story about starting it from nothing. It's really impressive. You've created something special here. Thank you, James said, feeling touched by her genuine words. I was wondering, Patricia said, hesitantly, if I could make a proper reservation. For next weekend. Just for one. She quickly added, I understand if you don't want me back. James thought for a moment, then took out his reservation book from behind the counter. How about Saturday at 7 p.m.? I have a nice table by the window. Patricia's face lit up with a real smile. That would be perfect. Thank you for giving me a second chance. As they finished their coffee, talking about the restaurant's history and Patricia's real job as a struggling real estate agent, not the successful investor she had pretended to be, James realized that sometimes the most difficult people just needed someone to show them a little kindness. The week passed quickly, and Saturday evening arrived. James found himself glancing at the door more often than usual. He wondered if Patricia would actually show up for her reservation. The staff had been briefed about her previous visit and her apology. Lisa, who worked at the front desk again tonight, gave James a knowing smile each time he looked toward the entrance. You think she'll come? Lisa asked during a quiet moment. I hope so, James replied. Everyone deserves a second chance. At exactly 6:55 p.m., the door opened and Patricia walked in. She looked elegant but not flashy, wearing a simple black dress with minimal jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she carried a small handbag instead of her large designer purse from before. When she approached the front desk, several staff members watched discreetly, curious to see what would happen. Good evening, Patricia said to Lisa with a polite smile. I have a reservation for 7 p.m., Patricia Wilson. Lisa nodded professionally, though James could see she was surprised by the transformation. Yes, Ms. Wilson, your table is ready. Please follow me. As Lisa led Patricia to her table by the window, James noticed a few customers from the previous week recognizing her. They whispered to each other and watched with interest. Patricia kept her head high but her eyes down, clearly aware of the attention but trying to ignore it. After Patricia was seated, James waited a few minutes before approaching her table. He wanted to give her time to settle in and look at the menu. Good evening, Ms. Wilson, he said when he finally walked over. Thank you for coming. Patricia looked up and gave him a small, nervous smile. Thank you for having me, and please call me Patricia. How do you like your table? James asked. It's perfect, she replied, looking out at the view of the busy street. Much better than I deserve after how I behaved. James shook his head. We all have bad days. Tonight is a fresh start. He recommended a few dishes and the house wine, then left her to enjoy her meal. Throughout the evening, he noticed she was polite to every server, thanking them for each dish and complimenting the food. It was hard to believe this was the same woman who had caused such a scene just a week ago. About halfway through her meal, something unexpected happened. A man at a nearby table kept staring at Patricia, whispering to his date and pointing. Finally, he got up and walked over to her table. Excuse me, the man said loudly. Aren't you the lady who pretended to know the owner last week? My cousin showed me the video. It's all over social media. Patricia froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. The restaurant grew quieter as people turned to watch. James, who was across the room, quickly started walking toward her table. Patricia carefully put down her fork and took a deep breath. Yes, that was me, she admitted, her voice steady but quiet. It wasn't my finest moment. The man seemed surprised by her honest answer. He had clearly expected her to deny it or make a scene. "Oh," was all he said. Before he could continue, James arrived at the table. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, looking between Patricia and the man. "I was just—" The man started, but then stopped, seeming unsure now. Patricia looked up at James with a grateful expression. "Everything is fine. This gentleman recognized me from my embarrassing performance last week." James turned to the man. "Sir, Ms. Wilson has apologized for what happened. We've moved past it. I hope you can too." The man looked uncomfortable under James's steady gaze. He mumbled something that sounded like sorry and returned to his table. James turned back to Patricia. "Are you okay?" She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "I suppose I should get used to it. Actions have consequences." "They do?" James agreed. "But good actions have good consequences too. How you're behaving tonight says more about who you are than one bad moment last week." Patricia smiled gratefully. "Thank you, James. Your kindness means more than you know." As James walked away, he heard Patricia quietly ask her server for the dessert menu. He smiled to himself. Sometimes people just needed a chance to show who they really were. Over the next few weeks, Patricia became a regular at the Golden Fork. She would come in every Saturday, always with a reservation, always alone. She always sat at the same table by the window and gradually tried every dish on the menu. The staff grew to like her, and even other regular customers began to recognize her as part of the restaurant's familiar faces. One evening in late April, Patricia arrived at her usual time but found the restaurant unusually busy. A large group had taken over half the dining area, celebrating what looked like a birthday. Colorful balloons decorated several tables, and laughter filled the air. "I'm sorry about the noise," Lisa told Patricia as she led her to her table. "It's Mr. Chen's birthday celebration. His sister organized a surprise party." Patricia smiled. "That's wonderful. Please don't apologize. Birthdays should be celebrated loudly." From her table, Patricia could see James moving between tables, greeting guests and looking slightly embarrassed by all the attention. He wore a paper crown on his head that clearly had been forced on him by the laughing children present. When he spotted Patricia, he waved and pointed to his crown with a silly face that made her laugh. After finishing her meal, Patricia was about to ask for the check when Lisa approached her table. "Ms. Wilson, Mr. Chen asks if you would join their celebration for cake." His exact words were, "Tell Patricia that regular customers are like family here." Patricia was surprised. "Oh, I wouldn't want to intrude on a family event." "It's not just family," Lisa explained. "There are friends, regular customers, and staff too. Please join us." After a moment's hesitation, Patricia nodded and followed Lisa to the large table where James sat with an older woman who must be his mother, a woman about James's age who looked like his sister, and various other people of all ages. "Everyone, this is Patricia," James announced as she approached. "She's one of our faithful Saturday regulars." People smiled and made space for her. A young girl offered Patricia a party hat, which she accepted with a smile, placing it on her head. "Perfect timing," James said. "We're about to cut the cake." As everyone sang "Happy Birthday" and James blew out the candles, Patricia felt a warm sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in a long time. Since her divorce 3 years ago, she had spent most of her time alone while trying to impress people who didn't really matter. Here, among strangers celebrating a simple birthday, she felt more at home than she had in years. After cake was served, James's mother, a tiny woman with a big smile, sat next to Patricia. "So you come here every week?" she asked in slightly accented English. "Yes," Patricia nodded. "The food is amazing. My son is good cook. Learned from me," the older woman said proudly, "but he needs wife. Too much work, no time for love." Patricia blushed, not sure how to respond. James, overhearing his mother, quickly came to the rescue. "Mom, please don't start matchmaking with my customers," he said, looking embarrassed. His mother just smiled innocently. "What? I just talking." James gave Patricia an apologetic look. "Sorry about that. She tries to set me up with everyone." Patricia laughed. "It's fine. Mothers are the same everywhere, I think." As the party continued, Patricia found herself talking with different people, hearing stories about the restaurant's early days and James's journey as a chef and owner. For the first time in months, she wasn't checking her phone or watching the door for someone more interesting to talk to. She was simply present, enjoying the moment. When it was time to leave, Patricia approached James. "Thank you for including me. It was really special." James smiled. "Thank you for coming, and for becoming part of our restaurant family." As Patricia walked to her car, she realized something had changed within her. The woman who had demanded special treatment just because she thought it made her look important was fading away. In her place was someone who understood that true belonging came not from pretending to be special, but from being authentic. 1 month later, the Golden Fork faced its biggest challenge yet. A famous food critic from the city's most popular newspaper had made a reservation under a false name. James only found out who the guest really was when the man was already seated and halfway through his appetizer. "It's Julian Parker," Lisa whispered urgently to James in the kitchen. "The food critic who destroyed that Italian place downtown last month. He's at table 12. James felt his heart drop. Julian Parker was known for his harsh reviews that could make or break a restaurant. His column was read by thousands of people each week. "Why didn't we know he was coming?" James asked, trying to stay calm. "He used a different name," Lisa explained. "We only realized when Chef Mike recognized him from a photo online." James took a deep breath. "Okay, we treat him like any other customer. Perfect service, perfect food. That's all we can do." The kitchen staff worked with extra focus and care. James personally checked each dish before it went out to table 12. From a distance, he watched Julian Parker eat. The critic's face showed no emotion as he took small bites and made notes on his phone. Just when things seemed to be going smoothly, disaster struck. A new server, only on his second day, tripped while carrying a tray of drinks. Glass shattered on the floor, and worse, some of the liquid splashed onto Julian Parker's expensive suit. The restaurant went silent. The young server looked terrified. Julian Parker stood up, his face turning red with anger. "Is this how you treat your customers?" he demanded loudly. "This suit costs more than your monthly salary." James rushed over. "Sir, I am so deeply sorry. We will pay for your dry cleaning. Please, let us." "Save it," Julian Parker interrupted. "I've seen enough for my review, and believe me, it won't be pretty." As Julian Parker grabbed his notebook and prepared to leave, a voice spoke up from across the room. "Excuse me, Mr. Parker." Everyone turned to see Patricia standing up from her usual Saturday table by the window. "Do I know you?" Julian Parker asked with a cold voice. Patricia walked over to him, looking confident in a way that reminded James of when he first met her, but somehow different, more genuine. "No, you don't know me," she said clearly, "but I know the Golden Fork. I've eaten here every week for months. And before you write your review, I think you should know something." Julian Parker raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. "A few months ago, I behaved terribly in this restaurant," Patricia continued. "I demanded special treatment, lied about knowing the owner, and made a complete fool of myself. People around the room were watching with wide eyes. Some recognized her from that night. Instead of throwing me out, which he had every right to do, James invited me back. He gave me a second chance." Patricia gestured around the room. "This place isn't just about food, it's about how people are treated. With dignity, even when they don't deserve it." She turned to the young server who was still standing frozen, holding a towel. "Accidents happen. I bet if you sit back down, they'll bring you a fresh meal and make things right. That's who they are." Julian Parker looked at Patricia, then at James, then at the young server whose hands were shaking. "You seem very passionate about this place," Julian said, his voice softer now. "I am," Patricia replied, "because they saw past my worst behavior and showed me kindness. How many places in this city would do that?" For a long moment, Julian Parker said nothing. Then, to everyone's surprise, he picked up his chair and sat back down. "I'll need a fresh napkin," he said to the nervous server. "And perhaps another glass of that excellent Cabernet." James let out the breath he'd been holding. "Right away, sir." As James walked back to the kitchen to personally prepare a new meal for the critic, he caught Patricia's eye and mouthed "Thank you." She smiled and returned to her own table. No one knew what Julian Parker would write in his review, but at that moment, it didn't seem to matter as much. The Golden Fork had shown its true character, and so had Patricia. Sunday morning, James woke up early, his mind still racing from the events of the previous night. He couldn't stop thinking about Julian Parker and what the critic might write. One bad review could hurt business for months. But he also couldn't stop thinking about Patricia and how she had stood up for the restaurant. He made himself a cup of coffee and opened his laptop to check his emails. There was nothing from Julian Parker or the newspaper yet. James sighed and closed the laptop. There was nothing to do but wait. When James arrived at the restaurant to prepare for Sunday lunch service, he found his staff already talking about the previous night. "Do you think Mr. Parker will write something terrible?" asked Mike, the head chef. "I don't know," James replied honestly. "But whatever happens, we'll deal with it together. We've worked too hard to let one review break us." The day passed slowly. Every time the door opened, James looked up, half expecting to see Julian Parker return, but the critic didn't come back. Regular Sunday customers filled the tables, and the kitchen stayed busy with orders. At 3 p.m., during the quiet time between lunch and dinner, James's phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Hello, this is James Chen," he answered. "Mr. Chen, this is Julian Parker." James's heart skipped a beat. "Mr. Parker, thank you for calling. I wanted to let you know that my review will be published in tomorrow's paper," Julian said, his voice giving nothing away. "I thought you should be prepared." "I understand," James said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Thank you for the warning." There was a pause on the line. Then Julian said something unexpected. "That woman who spoke up for you last night, she's not related to you." "No," James answered, surprised by the question. "She's just a regular customer." "Interesting," Julian said. "Well, that's all I wanted to say. Good day, Mr. Chen." The call ended, leaving James more confused than before. What did Julian's question about Patricia mean? Was it good or bad for the review? That evening, after closing the restaurant, James received a text message from Patricia. "Fingers crossed for tomorrow's review. Whatever he writes, remember why your restaurant is special." James smiled and texted back a simple "thank you." Monday morning arrived with gray skies and light rain. James bought a copy of the newspaper on his way to the restaurant and sat in his car, too nervous to open it right away. Finally, he took a deep breath and turned to the food section. There it was, in large letters. "The Golden Fork, a lesson in second chances" by Julian Parker. With shaking hands, James began to read. There are two ways to judge a restaurant: by the perfection of its food and service, or by the character it shows when things go wrong. The Golden Fork, a modest establishment on Maple Street, taught me that the second way might be more important. The food at the Golden Fork is excellent. Chef James Chen creates dishes that are both familiar and surprising. The grilled salmon with lemon sauce melts in your mouth. The homemade pasta has the perfect texture. But what truly sets this restaurant apart happened when a server accidentally spilled drinks on my suit. Instead of witnessing a typical restaurant panic, I saw something remarkable. A regular customer stood up and shared her own story of redemption at the Golden Fork. Her words reminded me why we go to restaurants in the first place, not just for food, but for the sense of community and belonging they create. The Golden Fork has built something special, a place where mistakes are forgiven and second chances are given freely. Is the food perfect? Almost, but not quite. Is the service flawless? No, accidents happen, but is the Golden Fork a restaurant worth visiting? Absolutely. It might just restore your faith in human kindness along with satisfying your appetite. 4 stars out of 5. James couldn't believe it. 4 stars from Julian Parker. Most restaurants would be thrilled with 3. He quickly called Lisa and read her the review. "We need to frame this," Lisa exclaimed. "And we should thank Patricia too. Without her, who knows what he would have written." James agreed. Patricia's honesty and courage had saved them. He made a mental note to thank her properly when she came in for her usual Saturday dinner, perhaps with a special dessert named after her. As he walked into the restaurant, James's phone began ringing with reservation requests. The power of Julian Parker's review was already working. The Golden Fork would be busier than ever. And all because one difficult customer had become their most loyal defender. 1 year later, the Golden Fork celebrated its 6th anniversary. The restaurant had changed significantly since Julian Parker's review. It was now twice the size, having expanded into the empty shop next door. The waiting list for reservations was often weeks long, and James had hired more staff to handle the increased business. But some things remained the same. The food was still prepared with care, the atmosphere was still warm and welcoming, and Patricia still came every Saturday evening to sit at her special table by the window. When Patricia arrived at her usual time, she was surprised to see her table decorated with flowers and a small reserved card with her name written in fancy letters. "What's all this?" she asked Lisa, who was showing her to her seat. "A surprise from James," Lisa replied with a smile. "He said it's a special day." Patricia sat down, touched by the gesture. On the table was a special menu card that read, "The Patricia Wilson Experience," with 5 courses listed below. She laughed when she saw that the dessert was called Second Chance Chocolate Cake. As other customers filled the restaurant, several nodded or waved to Patricia. She was now as much a part of the Golden Fork as the paintings on the walls or the plants in the windows. Some newer customers even thought she was related to James, a rumor neither of them bothered to correct. Halfway through her meal, James came out from the kitchen and sat down across from her. "You look tired but happy." "How's the food?" he asked. "Amazing, as always," Patricia replied. "Though I'm not sure I deserve an entire menu named after me." James smiled. "I think you do. Do you realize what today is?" Patricia nodded. "1 year since I made a complete fool of myself in your restaurant." "I prefer to think of it as 1 year since you started coming here regularly," James said. "And honestly, that day changed everything. For the restaurant, and—" he paused, looking slightly embarrassed, "for me too." Patricia felt her cheeks grow warm. Over the past year, her Saturday visits had sometimes extended to helping James close the restaurant. Those late nights had turned into walks around the neighborhood, talking about everything from childhood memories to future dreams. What had started as customer service had slowly, naturally evolved into friendship, and recently, something more. "I have something for you," James said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small key on a Golden Fork keychain. "It's a key to the restaurant. I thought you might want to come and go without waiting for me to open the door. Maybe help yourself to coffee in the mornings." Patricia's eyes widened. "James, are you asking me to move in with you?" James laughed. "Well, I do live above the restaurant, so in a way, yes. But mostly I'm asking you to be part of this place officially, not just as a customer." Before Patricia could answer, the front door of the restaurant opened, and a woman walked in who made them both freeze. She'd had blonde hair, big sunglasses, and a designer bag that looked very familiar. "Is that?" James whispered. Patricia nodded slowly. "She looks exactly like I did that day." They watched as the woman marched up to Lisa at the front desk, bypassing the line of waiting customers. "I need a table right now," they could hear her saying loudly. "I'm friends with the owner, James Chen. He always gives me the best table." Lisa looked over at their table with a helpless expression. James started to stand up, but Patricia put her hand on his arm. "Let me handle this," she said with a smile. As Patricia walked toward the front desk, she thought about how much she had changed in 1 year. From a woman who used lies to try to look important, to someone who had found real belonging by being herself. "Excuse me," Patricia said to the woman. "I couldn't help overhearing. You said you know the owner?" The woman looked Patricia up and down. "Yes, we're very close friends." Patricia smiled kindly. "That's interesting, because I'm Patricia Wilson, and I'm engaged to marry the owner next spring, and I don't believe we've met before." James, who had followed Patricia, nearly choked when he heard her words. "Engaged?" he whispered to her. Patricia turned to him with a mischievous smile. "Well, you did just give me a key, and I was going to say yes." As the woman at the front desk turned red with embarrassment, James took Patricia's hand. "In that case," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "let me introduce my fiancée to everyone." And that was how the Golden Fork gained not just an amazing rescue story, but a love story too. All because a Karen demanded a VIP table, not knowing the owner was standing right in front of her.